Today I'm going to be taking a history tour at the Maple Hill Cemetery in Charlotte, Michigan. So come along and join me. I'm really excited about this one. Going to learn some history from some historians locally here in Charlotte. Should be fun.
The Maple Hill Cemetery, the annual cemetery tour presented by the Eaton County Historical Commission. It's an all-volunteer organization, and you may have seen the books inside that we publish and sell, along with hosting the cemetery tour and any other ideas we may come up with. Today we're going to have a tour of a variety of folks interned here. We're going to start with two outstanding citizens that contributed a lot to the Charlotte area. Then we also have the story of the cemetery is told through the eyes of the Sextons and the caretakers that have been here. The 150-year history of the cemetery, and they've only had 3 or 4 Sextons because they served such a long time. And then finally we're going to honor the 2 veterans that are here that are Medal of Honor recipients, and one of them just being just interned here from World War II. They were able to identify his remains. So follow me and we'll start.
This place has become very dear to the heart of my family in the last 10+ years. My father, Chuck Brandon, has not only made it his mission to honor my mother, Barb, and all that she stood for in her life, but his generous heart has driven him to share her memory and legacy with everyone that he meets at this beautiful cemetery. My mom passed of cancer in 2010 after a long-fought battle. She had some time on her hands to reflect on the legacy her life would leave behind. She valued many things, but one of them was generosity. This outstanding speaker system that you're listening to today was gifted to the commission in her memory to enhance and improve this event and many others. Barb never met a stranger and loved to socialize wherever she went, but she valued her family and loved ones most of all. Whether it was stopping for a short visit, which would usually last an hour or more, or a camping trip, or a stay at St. Ignace after a drive up the Lake Michigan shore, she was always up for adventure and had a wonderful zest for life. It even led her to bungee jumping in Florida, and she always embraced the fun side of life. Her backyard bird sanctuary was a treasure she enjoyed with Chuck, her beloved pup and sidekick Baxter, myself, my sister Bobby, my son Finn, and niece Jagan. Barb led her life with appreciation and passion. She was a cancer warrior working tirelessly for the Relay for Life, and she was once the honorary chairperson. She worked as an eligibility specialist for the state of Michigan until her illness forced her to retire. Barb lived her 58 years with love, kindness, friendship, and passion, and would be happy to know that through Chuck, she is still helping others here today. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll move back to the grate here. We are now at the gravesite of Mr. Bob Munger, and here he is.
Good afternoon. Have you seen the bear? If you haven't, you need to go into the Courthouse Square Museum and see the brown bear that I killed with my rifle in May of 1962 on Kodiak Island. You guys know why bears don't wear shoes?
No.
Even if they did, they'd still have bare feet. My name is Robert S. Munger. Just call me Bob. I love the outdoors and I love hunting. So before you go and become offended, please remember that hunting is part of ecology, and in the 1960s, hunting was less restricted and much more acceptable. I always hunted for sport and respected the wildlife community. My real job as a hardware store owner, Munger Hardware, has been in Charlotte since my grandfather and a business partner named Jennings started in 1878. I took over the business in 1939 when I was about 20 years old. Our family is proud of our 3-generation hardware store. We carry a full line of farm implements, all kinds of hardware, ammunition, and even archery equipment. About the time I took over managing the store, I was smitten by bow hunting and started hunting whenever I could. Munger Hardware carries the best lines of bows and arrows made by Fred Bear out of Grayling, Michigan. So it's funny how random happenings in life end up making big changes in one's life. Well, I met Fred Bear quite by chance when we were both looking for deer at a ranch in northern Michigan. He and I were tracking the same buck and we bumped into each other. Our friendship began this way in 1951. By 1960, Fred and I met up and went to Point Barrow, Alaska to hunt polar bear. The only bear that actually will track down humans. What an experience meeting the Eskimo community there and seeing how they did things, but we didn't get any bear this trip. We did learn about cold and how being cold really is not good. It's been pretty spooky on the ice pack, alone with 100 miles offshore. Fred and I made several Arctic expeditions and soon realized that our lives were in the hands of our capable guides and bush pilots. And luck. The 1962 Arctic expedition was one that I didn't think we would make out alive. You have to read my book, which we have on sale. There you go. Fred did eventually get his polar bear with an arrow, and you can see actual footage of this polar bear hunt by searching YouTube. It's pretty exciting and real. I was a rookie, but Fred convinced me to carry the camera and take footage of our many hunting experiences. He used the footage in educational films for his company or later for TV shows. Our hunting adventures range from Arctic polar bears to whitetails in Nebraska and to zebra and Cape buffalo in Africa. I nearly got trampled by elephants in Africa in 1965. An elephant herd doesn't care if you happen to be in its path. Many times the hunting was disappointing and risky. A good sense of humor goes a long way in these circumstances. Did you guys hear the one about the shoes and the bear? Fred Bear and I made the perfect team in that respect. We both agreed that there were more thrilling hunting experiences than to face polar bears, brown bears, grizzly bears, Cape buffalo, Asiatic buffaloes, and elephants with a bow. Certainly the most miserable trip we ever took was to the swamps of the Amazon in 1967. The trip got off on the wrong foot and continued as a struggle with extreme heat, wading through waist-deep swamps with the possibility of stepping on poisonous snakes and electric eels. The Cape buffalo were flighty and close to impossible to sneak up while sloshing through the swampy water. They were also deadly if they decided to charge us. Our camping conditions were also a battle between biting insects, actual blood-sucking bats, and it was no resort. The water we drank was lukewarm and muddy, and the food, well, you'll have to believe me, it was no Taj Mahal. We were glad to leave that expedition, and I recommend that if anyone offers you to a free hunting tour to the swamps of the Amazon, just walk away. The most valuable asset a hunter can have is his loving wife. My wife, Phyllis, supports my adventurous spirit and takes care of the hardware store when I am off big game hunting. She and my 3 children, Richard, Ann, and Nancy, can't wait to hear my endless stories from all around the world. They are always in my thoughts during these times in the wilderness.
So Bob Munger retired from the hardware store in 1969 when his son Richard took over the hardware store, and then Munger Hardware closed its doors in Charlotte in 1977. But of course many people still remember it fondly. Bob Munger loved telling people about his adventures. He cared deeply about the environment and the people he met who survived in some really harsh climates. Bob died September 18, 1990, at about age 70. His beloved wife, Phyllis, died only 13 days later. Daughter Ann writes in a blog 20 years after that she says, "I like to think that they had such a happy, rich, loving life together that they just burned themselves out from enjoying life." And I just encourage you, even if you're not a hunter, to read this book. It is fascinating what he went through, and you don't have to have any kind of hunting background to really enjoy his adventures. So thank you for coming today.
These are some of the artifacts that I have found along the way. This is an actual threadbare recurve. It's a 50-pound bow. These are threadbare arrows with the arrow blades on them as well. So when a person pulls back these recurves with their fingers, there is no mechanical advantage. If it's 50 pounds, you pull back 50 pounds. Myself, and this would be an actual quiver and arrows that the hunters would wear with them. Myself, this is the bow that I use. And these cams are mechanical advantage of about 80%. So at 72 pounds that I pull 80%, I'm really only pulling 20 pounds. So the mechanical advantage of these, along with the mechanical broadheads that us hunters use nowadays, is a far cry from what the old timers used to use not many years ago. So.
If I had an apple, we could demonstrate, but fortunately we don't have one.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cora Kellogg Brown. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you about my husband, Tully Baskin Brown. Before anyone asks, although my family is from Battle Creek, I'm not part of the other much well-known Kellogg family of Battle Creek. Okay, Tully, who was born in 1873, came with his family to Michigan from New York many years ago. He was hired as the sexton of Maple Hill in April 1908, replacing J. Edson Sherman, who was sexton for 5 years before him. Tully, was the sexton here for 55 years, as you've already heard. While he was sexton, we actually lived in a house on the property, right near the building where we first gathered at the entrance of the cemetery. So, what does a sexton do, you might ask? Well, most anything you can imagine. The sexton is the person who oversees the cemetery and is sometimes referred to as a superintendent or a caretaker. They take care of the grounds, manage burial records, and do the overall record keeping. They might erect monuments, buildings and walls, plant trees, lay walkways, and of course, dig graves. To be a sexton, you must know about groundskeeping. Tully was always mowing and trimming the 66.5 acres cemetery and tending to the greenery. He sometimes worked 60 hours a week, but it was a labor of love. As sexton, you must also be able to lift and carry some pretty heavy things, and must be able to work in all kinds of weather. They did use the burial vaults, which we passed on the way here, they did use the burial vaults during the winter months when the ground was frozen and they were unable to dig graves by hand. I'm so proud of his many years of dedication to this cemetery. Tully had a lot of influence on what you see here today. He realized he was not only creating a beautiful resting place for our loved ones, but that he was recording their history and hoped that the community would see how much we cared for our families and the community and how we wanted them to be remembered. When Tully became superintendent, we moved into the Starkweather home here on the property. It was originally known as Starkweather Hill, as it belonged to Eliza and George Starkweather. Our home we furnished with treasures from my great-grandmother, Mrs. Samuel Robinson. We also have the fine desk that Tully purchased and placed in the front office, along with a set of coffin doors for use when the weather necessitated an inside funeral. A coffin door would allow easy access to the front parlor where they would hold their funerals or the coffin. It's also known as the funeral door, the casket door, or the death door. We had two fine sons during our marriage, Burdette and Melvin. Burdette owned the Brown drugstore in Charlotte until he died in 1959. Tully had such a vision for Maple Hill and would spend endless hours mapping out topography and planning changes to enhance the beautiful natural terrain here. He planned for and cared for this place so very much. He made sure that Maple Hill looked like a beautiful garden and a natural sanctuary for the dead who rest here and for their loved ones who came to visit. After all, with such beautiful and ornate gravestones, you must realize, even though Tully and Cora's are pretty plain compared to many of them, humble man, I suppose, you must realize that they were meant to be seen and appreciated and to show that the disease was cherished, loved, and respected. He also felt that the cemetery could be a great place to record and learn from history. He even tracked death rates and ages of those who died over many years, and even he was surprised at when improvements in medical treatments, cleanliness, and nutrition created a drop in the mortality rates in children. In 1906 through 1908, the average age of someone buried was 51 years, he figured out, with 36 children in that group under 5 years old that passed away that year. In 1936 through 1938, the average age jumped to 65 years old, and only 12 deaths of those 5 years old and under. Yes, Tully kept very good track of the records here at Maple Hill, even though he only had an 8th grade education. He often would have the information published in the paper so that others could learn about it too. For instance, we know that in 1928 there were 98 burials, with the highest number of burials occurring in February, March, and April. In 1947, he published the 105 names of the people buried that year. We know so much more about Maple Hill and its residents because of his excellent record keeping. Tully once told me that in 1928 the population of Maple Hill was 8,000, and today it's more like 18,000. We were both active in the community, members of the Lawrence Avenue United Methodist Church and also the Red Cross. Our 40th anniversary party was held in the basement of that church, where every detail from our wedding was recreated, down to the tiny little yellow flowers on the cake. Both of our sons were there to help us celebrate, which we enjoyed. After Tully retired, we lived at our house at 320 Johnson Street in Charlotte. There we had the privilege of watching a wonderful family grow up across the street. They were the Roy Lee family. The Lees had several fine sons, one of which Tully had under his wing at the cemetery. He worked quite a bit at Maple Hill with Tully, learning the ropes. Roy Lee was that young man, and he proudly carried on Tully's legacy for another 50 years. You might have seen the nice piece that was published about my Tully in the Charlotte newspaper when he celebrated his 35th year of working here. It read, "Imagine the number of homes that this kindly, self-effacing, and thoughtful man has deeply touched during the 3.5 decades that he's worked here. No Main Street figure has worked the same amount of years, made and held more friends. Anyone can do a considerable portion of this job, but Tully Brown has stepped it up to make it a place of sincerity and warmth. That he has served 35 years is notice of his dependability, and to this add his other qualities of heart and soul, and you have a saintly servant. The community has come to know the value and the importance of such a man." I'm just thinking the world could use a few more Tully Browns nowadays.
Good afternoon. I succeeded Tully Brown. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Roy Lee. And I was out working at this cemetery in a variety of roles for 46 years, from 1939 to 1985. And for many of those years, I was assisted by my wife, Virginia Lea. Virginia?
Thank you. My name is Virginia Lea, and I was born on September 17th, 1921. I lived in Charlotte my whole life, and I graduated from Charlotte High School in 1939. I was working as an accounting clerk when I met Roy here, and we got married in March of 1944. I spent a little time working as a medical secretary, and then to our great joy, on January 26th of 1949, our daughter Rosemary was born. Sweet.
Thank you. Now, Cora Brown mentioned that the Lees lived across the street from the Browns on Johnson Street. And I was looking for a job. You see, I'd left home and I had worked as a farm hand for years. And Tully persuaded me to come to work out here, and I started as a grave digger. I worked my way up, or down, as the case may be. And in 1963, I became the superintendent. And I was superintendent until 1985. What a lot of changes during those 46 years I was out here. Today you can hear the traffic from Lansing Road and the freeway. One of the things I was especially proud of during my tenure was how well we landscaped the grounds here. And when the freeway came through, well, it took over part of the cemetery, the park and ride lot, which you see up at the front. So my brothers and I, and oh, by the way, I had 6 brothers, count them, 6. And in 1969, we moved that stone gate that you see by the chapel over to, from up on Lansing Road. And to do that, we numbered every stone before taking it apart and reassembling it. And those stone lintels that are on top, those stone balls, we put them back the same way. And if you look carefully, they're crooked. Same way it was built, we got to do it exactly right. Now, I retired in 1985, and quite frankly, I really missed the cemetery, and we lived on South Cochran, and I died in 1988. I think it was June 6th from complications from diabetes. And Virginia will tell you now about the rest of her life.
I married him for his jokes and his precision. After Roy died, I missed him so much, but I really wanted to focus on staying busy with the community. So I was a member of the Roof Circle of the Lawrence Avenue United Methodist Church, and I also became an officer of the Eaton County Historical Commission. And then I also worked at the State of Michigan Treasury Department for many, many years. So I stayed very busy, even though I missed him. And then I had an extended illness and passed away on December 10th, 2001.
Thank you for hearing about the Lees.
Oh. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the Maple Hill Cemetery Board, this road that the Lee site is on has been renamed after Roy and Virginia Lee.
And don't go anywhere. We now have our first Medal of Honor recipient.
Medal of Honor awardee that's buried in this cemetery was not from Charlotte or Michigan. I believe he was born in New York State. He was a Marine, and he serviced the guns during the Battle of Mobile Bay. And during that, he was largely responsible for keeping up a rapid rate of fire. And because of that, they were able to sink the ram Tennessee. And for that, he was awarded the Medal of Honor.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would now move on to Ensign Flaherty's.
Hi, friends. My name is Francis Flaherty. My friends call me Fran, and my family calls me Uncle Fran. I grew up about a block from the courthouse. My dad moved here from New York, and he managed a grain elevator. My mom owned a gas station, and it was filled with flowers. I helped water the flower boxes. She didn't like the big ugly advertising. Instead, she liked good landscaping. I lost both my parents in 1932. My grandma and Aunt Laura and Uncle Ralph helped raise me and my brothers after that. It was fun to grow up in Charlotte. I was a Boy Scout in Troop 49 or 45, which I hear is the same troop you have today. Maybe I was a little mischievous at times. I became famous or infamous one day when I threw my homemade bola up into the air, and wouldn't you know it, but it would hit a high power tension wire and shorting them out, causing a massive power outage in Olivet, Bellevue, Eaton Rapids, and parts of Charlotte. And wouldn't you know it, but they would print my name in the papers the next day. My brothers and I loved going to Chippewa Lake and taking out our homemade raft that we named Woozy Hicket. When we took it out, it was our tradition to shout, "Make way for the good ship Woozy Hicket." I loved football and science club. I was part of the Sharhayan yearbook committee in high school, and I graduated in 1936. I wanted to become a doctor, so I went to the University of Michigan. I worked my way through college to pay for it, and I graduated in 1940. I spent my free weekends with my brother John and his girl Martha in Battle Creek. I had an opportunity to take a special Navy training course for the National Defense Program. First, I was sent out to a ship for 30 days to see if I could adjust to sea life. And then after that, I spent 3 months at a university in Chicago to be commissioned as an ensign for the U.S. Navy Reserves. I was excited to be stationed with the battleship USS Oklahoma, who was set for Hawaii. Very exciting for the Charlotte boy. Well, I better quit talking and get these postcards and all to the mail. It's already December 6th, and you know the post office is.
Good afternoon. I'm John Flaherty. I was just a month old when Uncle Fran died. I still have the 3 dolls made of woven reeds, the Christmas presents that he mailed to the family the day before Pearl Harbor. They arrived just after Christmas. Still have them. I traveled here from New Mexico. Other members of the family traveled from Texas, California, and Michigan. We were all welcomed to Charlotte by a large number of community members. In 2015, the Navy began DNA testing to identify the remains and return them to the hometowns and to the families. In 2019, Francis's remains were identified. On August 21st, just over a month ago, Uncle Fran was buried next to his father, mother, and brother. During the very impressive service, I was presented with a U.S. flag by a Navy Rear Admiral. A Navy sailor played taps, and 7 other Navy sailors gave him a 21-gun salute for Uncle Fran. The service ended with military jets flying a missing man mission formation. It's now time for me to leave and return to New Mexico. Thank you for coming and listening to my uncle's story.
Okay, the current sexton is Ricky, and many of you probably know him. And Julie will give us a little rundown here.
Not a lot, but I should have done this actually probably after Roy Lee. Ricky Hinken, if you've had the opportunity to meet him, is the current sexton. Between Tully Brown, Roy Lee, and Ricky Hinken, we've got about 130 years of dedication to the cemetery. Ricky, although if you've ever met him, looks like an incredibly young man. He's a little older than he looks, but I hope he sticks around another many years. He took over directly from Roy Lee and has been lovingly caring for this place ever since then. If you have any questions about the cemetery in general, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the tour when we head back to the building, if I could help in any way. Are we done?
Okay, once again, we'd like to thank you for supporting us, and we hope you enjoyed this little history lesson, and see you again next year, and the sun's shining.
Well, that was a lot of fun. It's always nice to go to an event that focuses on history and has local history from people that actually know about it. It's really special when they do the costumes and the whole presentation. So very nice. Some of these people that were presenting today were relatives of the deceased, so that made it even more special. So if you like today's tour, or like this, I encourage you to go find similar events like this in your area with local cemeteries. So they're always fun to go to. So if you like today's video, please leave me a like, leave me a comment, tell me what you thought, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.